Hey guys, welcome to the garage. Today, I want to make a video on jerkbait fishing for co-anglers. Now, if you're a boater, enjoy the video, but this is more for the co-anglers. A lot of people say, what's the difference between a co-angler throwing a jerkbait and a boater, or your professionals? What's the difference between throwing them? They're both throwing a jerkbait. Well, most of the time, your pro, he's up on the front with the live scope. He's targeting brush piles. You don't have that option. You're shotgun blasting the bank or open water out there, making different casts out there, getting it down. What I want to do today is to show you what I do with my jerk baits that kind of gives me the edge over, say, my competition. Uh, Again, I'm in the back of the boat, just like the other 150 guys I'm fishing against. I don't have live scope, but I'm just adding the little tricks to my jerkbait. Allows me to maybe trigger one or two more strikes in a day's time. But first, I'm going to get into it. I think back in the 50s, I think a company by the name of Rapala, they came out with a jerkbait. And I could be wrong. It could be somebody else, but I'm thinking it's Rapala. And a guy by the name of Stacy King. He's a legend here in the Ozarks for jerkbait fishing. He traveled tours and all that. You can Google him. He's just a great, humble guy. But he was telling us a story one time where Rapala had they didn't have enough jerk baits produced at this time. But what they were doing, they were giving them tackle stores, and tackle stores were renting them out to customers to go fish with. And what you had to put down a big deposit. And you go out and fish with it. And he said that at that time bass hadn't even seen the jerkbait yet. I mean, they were just slamming it left and right. And at the end of the day, when you got done fishing, you just brought the lure back. You got your deposit back. But anyhow, right after that, Smithwick had put mass production down and started. And they came out with a Rogue, which is a great bait. But here in the Ozarks, and I'm speaking about us here, growing up in the Ozarks. It seems like we started jerkbait fishing as kids. Some people say it's really complex. It's a hard technique. It's as hard as you make it. It's just one of those things that you just have to go out, put it in your hand, and throw it all day long and build confidence with it. There's so many different color selections, and we'll get into the colors in a little bit, and on what color to throw and what circumstance. But again, there's so many variables in, it's like stained water, overcast days, clear water, sunny days. I mean, there's so much to cover in that right there. But if you watch, say, one of Randy Blockett's videos, Randy's very, very knowledgeable of it. I mean, matter of fact, he's so knowledgeable. Ito, I think his name is, owns Mega Bass, actually came to Randy, and Randy helped design this Vision 110 jerkbait, which is the hottest bait on the market for jerkbait fishing, that is. But if you listen to Randy, he's got some great videos on talking about color selections on what, in different variables of water conditions or weather conditions. But anyhow, to get into it and all that, the baits I like to throw, I put the Vision 110 in my hand. I have 100 of them here. I mean, for crying out loud, if my wife knew that these things were $26 a pop, and then I spend the money for the aftermarket hook, she'd probably divorce me. But anyhow, we'll keep up between us. But anyhow, I like the Vision 110. It's where my confidence lies. It's got a transfer system in it. Inside here, there's a ball bearing. And every time you go to cast it, that ball bearing falls to the back of the bait, and it kind of gives it that gyro effect. It helps it sling that bait straight out to the area you're throwing it. Where when I grew up, all we had was, say, the Smithwick Rogue, great jerk bait. But the thing is, it tumbles when you throw this bait. I mean, it's doing this right here. Now, if you can get a long cast out of it and you get the bait to suspend, it's a dynamite bait. I have made some money on the Smithwick Rogue. But again, the performance of the Vision 110, Mega Bass Vision 110, is just it's superior to anything else that's out there. It's such a good jerk bait that other companies are mimicking it. And I have fell victim into buying those other jerk baits. And you know, they do work good. They will catch fish and all. But in a tournament situation, I don't want to get out there and take a chance on that bait not performing like the Vision 110. Uh, there's several different sizes in the Vision 110. Matter of fact, you know, we got the regular Vision 110. We have the Vision 110 plus one. It dives a little deeper. It's got a little bit sharper of action when it hits. It jumps more back and forth. Where the Vision 110, the original, it's a more of a subtle bait. It doesn't have a lot of action or like the Vision 110 plus one. The Vision 110 plus one, you can capitalize in very clear water. That's when fish are really deep, it will draw them up out of those depths a little further and all. But most of the time, as a co-angler, I put the Vision 110, just the original one, in my hand, and I don't put it down. Uh, Now, the other sizes, there's a Vision 110 Junior and there's a Vision 110 plus one Junior. This plus one Junior, it's out of all of them, the action of this one here is probably my favorite. The downside of it is I don't throw my lures on the spinning rod. I throw them on my bait casters. I can't get a long enough cast on this right here to work it the way I want to work it back to the boat. But again, if I was throwing this on a spinning rod, you know, literally I could bomb this thing half a mile out there. This bait here will get you bit when this one here won't. Everybody's throwing the Vision 110. This is the downfall of the Vision 110. I'll pick this bait up again. If you listen to that ball bearings back and forth. Now those fish, whenever that sound's coming over the top of them, those fish, it's more likely they've been hung once or twice before on that particular sound. Where if you were throwing, say, the Smithwick Rogue, it has hardly, I mean, it's got some sound to it, but the sound of it's different. In a high pressure situation where, let's say we have 150 to 200 boats on a lake in a given tournament through a course of 2 or 3 days, not counting the fact that they've been out there 3 to 4 days before that, you know, jerking those jerk baits. Over time, those fish get accustomed to that sound. So, you know, in a high pressure situation, you might think about putting some of these Smithwick, the original Rogues, in your box, because they can catch fish over the Vision 110 whenever it's not producing. Now the things I do with the Vision 110, as soon as I get them, I bring them home, I get them out of the box, I get the hooks off of them. The Vision 110 hooks are sticky sharp. They are very, very sharp. I mean, you know, the thing is, I don't have a problem getting a hook in a fish. I have a problem with the fish staying buckled. A lot of guys saying, "Well, you're using the wrong rod setup and all that." That's not the case. I've in a tournament, I lost a big 7-pounder one time. I literally had it at the boat and it came off. And what happened? The hook they're so weak they straighten out. They're soft hooks. They straighten out. They're designed to get into the fish. Again, I'm sure if I was using, say, a spinning rod that's really like a buggy whip, I'm sure I probably would have kept the fish and it would not have bent that hook out. But again, I'm as a co-angler, I use a bait caster simply because most of the time we have certain angles we have to throw, like we have to throw between two boat docks. The bait caster is more effective with my accuracy to say, where if I was throwing a spinning rod, when you throw a spinning rod, I just seem like my bait's drifting to the left or the right, especially in a windy situation, because it lobs up. Now with a bait caster, I can drive it straight, you know, like I'm throwing a baseball, not underhanding a softball. But again, I'm sure some guys out there say, I don't have any problem with it. Well, if that what's works for you, then continue doing it. I just choose not to do it. Again, on my hooks, I take those factory hooks off. You know, I give them to my friend. I use them as practice hooks or whatever, but I just don't use the factory hooks. What I do is I use this G finesse hook. So Aaron Martin designed this hook several years ago. It's kind of got an O'Shaughnessy bend to it. I've never had a problem losing fish on this particular hook. Um, what I do is the Vision 110s come with a stock number 6 hook. I upsize it to a stock number 5. Reason I do that, it adds weight to my jerkbait to allow it to sink, and we'll get into that in just a second. Also on my back tube, I got the 2 G Finesse number 5s. On the front, I have the Gamakatsu. I am a big guy on the red hooks. We've been doing it here in the Ozarks for about 30 years now. I put a number 6. If Gamakatsu made a number 5, I'd be putting a number 5 on there. But again, they make a 6, they make a 4, and they make a 2. I wish G Finesse would come out with red hooks. Hint, hint. But again, the red hook, people say, well, that's psychosomatic. Fish can't see red. I'm not going to argue here or there about if fish can see red. I can tell you a situation I was in a BFL on Grand Lake of the Cherokees one time where I was throwing the identical jerkbait as the guy in front of me, and I had red hooks. He did not have red hooks. I was culling all day long. He was struggling just to get one fish. I think he came in with nothing that day. And still today, whenever I run into him, he'll say, remember that time? And I say, should get you some red hooks. Maybe it was the cadence I had, but again, I have the faith in the red hooks. When you get them in, a lot of times you will see the bait in the fish's mouth where he has annihilated the front hook. You know, he bypassed the back tube and just got the front hook. Again, maybe I just had the right color jerk bait, but most of the time they'll target in on that red hook. Another thing on my jerk baits, one thing you'll notice is I always put a dot on them. Reason being, if you go up and say you Google shad in a lake and you see them, and when you see them, you'll see the flash off their side, but you always see that black dot on the side of a shad come by. It makes it more realistic, and it's something, again, they can target. They can put their eye on, they see that dot and they'll hit that dot. If the dot wasn't on there, all they see is the entire bait. They gives them something to focus on. Again, psychosomatic, but hey, I'll take a $30 jerkbait any day and color it up if it gets me more bites. Also, got into the sizes on weighting. Say the weight system. If you get one of these jerk baits are designed at the factory. I think they suspend them in 30 or 65 degree water. Let's just throw a number out there. When they leave the factory with the factory hooks on, they're number 6s. When they pull them down the tank and they test them, that bait will set perfectly still at the factory where they make them. You don't want a jerk bait that just goes down and pauses, sits still, and you sure don't want one that rises back up. I put a number 5 on there, the oversized hook, on these jerk baits, because I want that bait, when I jerk it down, when I hit it, that it's facing nose down like such, and it's actually falling. It might fall a foot every 30 seconds, but those hooks will actually allow it to fall. And when I'm out there, say during practice on a tournament, I'll actually take the suspended dots, or we take these little split rings right here that you can take them off another bait if you're in need of one, or they make lead wire that we wrap around the hooks. I've found that if I put the number 5s on there, it pretty much gives me the fall rate that I want. There are sometimes I've got one right here that this one here would not. It's got same setup, same hooks. I couldn't get it to sink as fast as I wanted it to, or sink the fall rate I wanted. So I put the suspended dot on there. I cut a little piece of suspended dot, put it on there, and when I found the weight that I wanted, I added super glue onto it because I didn't want it coming off during a tournament. But the one thing you do once you get the baits where they fall the rate that you want them to, have you a black Sharpie or whatever and put a mark on the bait somewhere where you'll know when you look at it, you know, okay, I've already tuned this one. It's ready to go. Because there's nothing worse than getting out there in a tournament and tying on a bait that has not been tuned yet. And next thing you know, you're jerking one back and you look down and the thing's floating up on your, it's dive bombing on you. Either way you want it, where it's falling about a foot every 30 seconds. Also, when you're tuning your jerk baits, if you have a swimming pool at your house, you can't tune your baits there. Most swimming pools these days are salt water. Salt water, I think it's denser or whatever. You will not get the same fall rate. You can't get it to suspend like you can in regular water. Like in what I do in the wintertime, when the water temperature gets down to the low 40s or upper 30s, I will go to the lake and I will just spend the entire day just suspending jerk baits. I won't even worry about fishing and all. I don't go to the lake when the water's 55 or 60 degrees because it will not suspend the same as it will when that water's really cold, like in the upper 30s or lower 40s. So that's when you want to go to the lake and just focus on suspending jerk baits, because you will not get bit. Absolutely will not get bit if you do not get this thing where it's suspended the way you want it to and with that fall rate. So make sure you go out. You know, granted, if you go out and it's 40 degrees and you tune a jerk bait, the water temperature is 40 degrees, and you tune a jerk bait and you go out during a tournament and it's say 38, 39, it's going to affect the fall rate just a little bit, but not enough to cause you any havoc in the end. Okay, another thing on your hook selection and all this. This is the new Maverick 110. Rapala makes it. It's a really good looking bait. It's got great action. The only problem I found with this is, if you can see right there, the factory hooks, they grab onto one another. And the last thing you want to do is make a long cast with the jerk bait, because it might take you 2 minutes to get that bait back to the boat after, if you're working efficiently in the water in the depth, and you get it back and those hooks are wrapped up like that. It affects the action, first of all. Second, if a fish just come up and swipe at it, there's a chance that it's not going to get it. This is something you do not want. Make sure that whenever you do, make sure your hooks are not going to grab one another. I really wish that Rapala would actually come up with a better design, or put a hook on there that's not going to grab one another. Maybe I'll spend some time with it, figure it out. But again, that Maverick 110, it's got great action. It's an awesome bait, other than the hooks. It's kind of buyer beware. Change out the hooks on them. Now let's get into let's go to the rods. I'm going to talk a little bit about rods. First of all, I told you I use a bait caster. The reason I don't like using a spinning rod is because I throw braid to fluoro. I tie an FG knot to my fluorocarbon, and that's how I fish it. Well, people are going to say, well, why don't you just get rid of your braid and just go full fluorocarbon? Well, first of all, in the wintertime, if you're throwing fluorocarbon absorbs moisture. And when you go to make that cast and that air temperature, say it's in the 20s, that line has a tendency to freeze. It looks like a big dust storm going off, and you don't get the cast that you want, and you're constantly fighting your braid all day long. The reason I do not use fluorocarbon, I use 300 to 400 series reels, is because I have a tendency sometimes to put too much fluorocarbon on my rods. And there's sometimes I just get out there and you can't help it. You get a wing knot inside that fluorocarbon. And I don't want to carry extra line, and I don't want to have to sit down there and pick it out and take half my line off to get that wing knot out. So I don't even mess with the hassles of doing that. But I think a spinning rod would probably be the best jerkbait rod out there, because you can make an extremely long cast, say, especially with this Vision 110 Junior. You can bomb cast it. You can use lighter line, so it allows that line, the bait, more freedom to do its job. But again, I just don't use a spin caster. But there's guys out there I know that do, and more power to them. It's just not my choice. Not the rod I choose. Bait casting rods. Okay, we're going to get into it. I'm going to start you out with, and there she goes. Hang on a sec. Okay, I'm going to start on the lower end of fishing rods. Jerkbait rods. This is where I'm seeing so many guys online giving, I'm not going to say poor information. It might work for them, but if you come here in the Ozarks, when we started jerkbait fishing in the early 80s all the way through the 90s, everybody had a 6'6" rod. Reason being is because when you're throwing that jerkbait all day long, and the thing is, it's easier on your wrist. It's easier on your elbows. You don't get the tennis elbow. It will, if you use a too big of a rod, it will fatigue you very quickly and all. If you're using too long a rod, when you're tapping that jerkbait, the tip of that rod is going to be hitting the top of the water, and that's just something you do not want. I mean, they say, well, you can't get the casting distance. I can smoke that jerkbait after 40, 45 yards. Also, I use the DC reels. DC reels is simply because I'm using 10-pound test fluorocarbon. If I was using my other reels and my fingers are cold, they're just not copacetic at that day in that cold weather. I will fight backlash all day long, especially if I'm casting more towards into the wind and all. So I do spend the money on the DC reels. This is a Scorpion DC. They're about $250. On the gear ratio, this is an 8-to-5. It doesn't matter if I had a 5-to-1 gear ratio or 8-to-5. The gear ratio has nothing to do with jerkbait fishing. All the action of the jerkbait comes from the rod tip. It's all in the rod. Has nothing to, again, the gear ratio has nothing to do with it. So don't get caught up in that. On the line, I use, forgive me, but I think it's Cigar Vision. It's the blue or yellow and blue box. I like the 10-pound test in that. It's a smaller diameter than a lot of them that's out on the market. Like if you got a red label in the same pound test, the red label, Cigar Red Label, is going to be more of a thicker diameter. I want that thinner diameter for when I'm working that jerkbait. If the line is bigger, heavier, let's say, that fluorocarbon has a tendency of sinking. And when that line is going down into the water, it pulls that jerkbait down with it too. And I don't want that. I want the lighter, thinner line where it's just sitting there with my jerkbait. And when I jerk it, that's when it comes down, not when the line's pulling it down. I don't want any movement in that bait. When I pause it, I want it to sit still, and I want the fall rate to do all the action. I don't want my line moving the bait any. Also, with your fishing line, you always want to keep pretty new line on there. You don't want any pigtail coming off there, because when you jerk it down and you go to loosen when you jerk that bait and you throw that slack back to it, that porky tail and that line will actually act as a spring, and it will actually move that bait. So what you want to do, if you start getting a porky tail or stretching your line, take some of this Blakemore Real Magic. When you get it in, coat it down. It helps loosen up and take the memory out of that fishing line. Again, I told you on the rods, I use a 6'6". I don't use a 6'7". I don't use a 6'8". Mega Bass has a rod. It's a $400 or $500 rod. It's called a Destroyer. It's a jerkbait rod. I would probably sell a kidney to get one, but again, not going to sell a kidney. But to keep from breaking the bank, I have two rods here. The first one I'm going to show you, it's that Buku. It's a 6'6" medium action Buku. It's a great rod. I can throw it in the back of my truck. I have a $100 bill invested in it. If it breaks, I can get a new one. I'm only out of pocket $100. Again, it's a great rod. It's got a great tip on it. Now, my favorite rod, and it took me years to find this rod. Again, same setup on the reel, same line, but this is an FX series. I I don't even know where they're made at. I just found it at a store one day. It's a $200+ rod. Again, it's a 6'6". It is extremely light, very sensitive. It's got the perfect tip for a jerkbait. Uh, whenever one hits it, and I'm jerking one, smacks it, and I lean into it, it's got the perfect flex for working the jerkbait, but it hits about right in here. It locks up. It locks, and it seems to help drive that hook down into the fish. And I've never lost a fish on this rod, to say, knock on wood. I don't want to lose a fish this year. But again, this FX series 6'6". And I'm not sponsored by these guys, but the number on it is WMB66MF. It's a 6-foot medium fast. It says pound test 6 to 12. It's made for throwing 8 to 1/2 ounce baits. Again, if you want a good jerkbait rod, guys, grab this FX. I promise you, it's all I use it for is jerkbaits. Matter of fact, when jerkbait season's over with for me, I put it back in the sleeve, put it in the corner, and it doesn't get used for anything else. But again, guys, I know I'm going to forget a lot of things here. Again, just over 40 years of jerkbait fishing. This is what I've come down to. I've got my box I take with me right here. On colors, again, you can get crazy with colors and all. Here in the Ozarks, we have a lot of stained water. You have probably 2 foot, 3 foot visibility. The one thing that I will stick in my hand pretty much all day long is that LG bone, purple back, that chartreuse side. It seems like I can take this bait anywhere and catch fish on it. I can put it in my hand all day long and, again, catch fish on it. I did run into a circumstance in the Carolinas one time at Hartwell where during practice I threw that LG bone all day long in that clear water, and I figured they just weren't biting the jerkbait. Day one, I drew a pro by the name of Stetson Blaylock, and he was throwing the Vision 110, but it was the Pro Blue. It doesn't have the chartreuse belly on it, and he was killing them on it. So, I mean, it took me about an hour to realize, oh, it's a chartreuse belly they're not hitting, because I wasn't catching anything. So I took my pocket knife and got down the bottom of the boat, and on the LG bone, I scraped all the chartreuse off of it and made me a Pro Blue really quick. Now, when it comes to colors, again, guys, I know majority of us aren't sponsored by Mega Bass. They're not sending us every color in a rainbow and saying, hey, promote these colors. The handful of colors I do have is, again, Pro Blue. Again, that it's a great bait anywhere where you got clear water, fish are deep, overcast days. That Pro Blue is phenomenal. Up here in the Ozarks, where we have a lot of stained water, that stain reaction, OG, it's got the orange belly on it. Stain reaction. Again, I use like this Pro Blue. I use the +1 when I'm in very, very clear water, where I've got to get the bait down in a deeper water column to get those fish to come up out of the rocks that are down there, and maybe that 25, 30 foot of water, they will come up to annihilate this bait. But again, on the stain water, I just stick with like your stain reaction, your LG bones, and what's this, Awakened Shad and all. It's a Japanese color or Japanese exclusive bait. You have to get it out of Japan. Now, I can throw any of these baits on overcast days, sunny days. It doesn't matter. This is just, it's kind of something you just put in your hand in if you're just lost for colors. Now, on sunshiny days that we got wind. I'm not talking about white capping or anything like that. We got breeze or something like that. This Tennessee shad. This bait is very hard to beat. Whenever you have sunshine with just a little bit of breeze, the flash on it, there's something about it. I've had a lot of successful days on the tail. It's got an accent of some chartreuse. I think, again, I don't know if that really matters and all that. I just know that that flash on the side of that bait is awesome. It's translucent. Now, if I was, say, on a lake that's got a lot of stain, It's overcast. What I want to focus on is more of my table rock shads and stuff that's more solid on the side. Uh, I painted the chartreuse on the bottom of this. They come with just a regular pearl belly, but I get crazy with my bait sometimes. But overcast, slight wind days with stained water, you can't go wrong with that right there. You don't have to, again, you don't have to go chase down and buy every color in the rainbow. It just, you'll make it confusing. Just get you a handful of colors. And I told you that I was going to tell you what the best color was. The best color jerkbait is the one you have confidence in, the one you can put on and you can jerk it all day long and not put it down. Um, don't be jumping down the bottom of the boat, changing colors out constantly. Again, you can't catch fish in the bottom of the boat. Just put it in your hand, leave it there. If you come by one, you could have the wrong color jerkbait on, and if you come by one, he's going to hit it. It's just the beast. They're opportunists. They're going to eat when something comes by them. Now, let's say, for instance, you did get a bite, you did catch a fish, and say one or two fish, and you notice they're grabbing the back hook. Obviously, that's telling you, hey, that might not be the color for you. Then you might switch up your colors. But again, if they're grabbing that front hook and they're taking it down good, and you're not losing a lot of fish, you've got the right color. But again, just let the fish tell you what they're wanting. They'll usually nip at the back hook if it's the color's not right. But again, guys, I went over the hooks, line. I can't think of really anything else other than just go fish, try it out. Again, don't go into a tournament and just think, hey, I'm gonna throw this all day long. Go get some confidence in it. Take it to the lake. Go practice with it. Again, the jerk bait, it's as hard as you make it. Again, it can be a rewarding bait, or at the end of the day, it can be a nightmare if you're not used to throwing a jerk bait. Anyhow, guys, I hope this helps. Check in with me next week. Like and subscribe. See you next time.